friends. This is Andrew Phipps. Welcome to Faith, Family, and Freedom broadcast today. I hope you're having a good day, and it's a delight to have you with us as we explore some thoughts and ideas about America and our place in the community of nations. And today we have some interesting topics. I maybe have more than one, and so we want to share with you a few things from just some thoughts. You know, America's decision to remove the basis for moral standards, a knowledge that there is a divine purpose and accountability to life, has resulted in a cancer of immorality that is silently eating away the fabric of our society. Darrell Scott, the father of Rachel Scott, a victim of the Columbine High School shootings in Littleton, Colorado, put it best when testifying before the Congress. He said this: "Men and women are three-part beings. We all consist of body, soul, and spirit. When we refuse to acknowledge a third part of our makeup, we create a void that allows evil, prejudice, and hatred to rush in and wreak havoc. When something as terrible as Columbine's tragedy occurs, politicians immediately look for a scapegoat, such as the NRA. They immediately seek to pass more restrictive laws that continue to erode away our personal and private liberties. We do not need more restrictive laws. Eric and Dylan would not have been stopped by metal detectors. No amount of gun laws can stop someone who spends months planning this type of massacre. The real villain lies within our own hearts." I believe that it was David Clark, the well-known sheriff there in Wisconsin, who made a great statement. He said, "It's not the police who need to be restrained, it's the public." We have grown into a thought process where we have uncivil society, where we have given up on personal responsibility and the attitude that now it's the other person's fault. You give me a society where children grow up with no boundaries or knowledge of concern for civil society and personal responsibility, and that's what you have. You have chaos, you have mayhem, and you have a disrespect for authority, whether it's the police, whether it's educators, whether it's the clergy, or anyone that might be in authority. We have grown to be very cynical. We throw temper tantrums in the most sacred places. We can be in public arenas and we don't mind to be rude. We don't mind to be boisterous. We don't mind to be fierce. We want to get in people's faces. We want to do whatever we want to do without any restraints, and it has had its effects. That's why we went from gum chewing as a problem in the schools in the 1940s to metal detectors today. Unless there is a moral code, an understanding that's inculcated in the individual, usually starting from his birth or her birth on in their development into their adolescence, unless those values of respect for others and love for one another, unless those are promoted, we see the negative and we see the ill effects of people that have no regard for God. His laws are the laws of moral society. We allow the abnormal to become normal and the abhorrent to become acceptable. And we'll be back in just a few moments. I did want to return to Sheriff David Clark's remarks. I think he may not be the sheriff any longer, but he has, I have his book, and I know that he had a lot of attention and publicity for being a law and order type enforcement person. And I think that he is so right when he mentioned the fact that we have grown into a mouthy, mobile phone wielding, vulgar, uncivil society with no personal responsibility and the attitude that it's the other person's fault. I couldn't agree more. I believe that not only does Sheriff Clark have a wonderful point of view that needs to be heard, and it needs to resonate with us. It needs to take lodging. You know, no amount of police or authority can make people, if they have not a law on the inside. It has to be within the heart, I believe. It needs to be taught at home. And so many of our homes, especially in our largest cities, are so dysfunctional. Children that grow up not knowing the father, or growing up into homes where there is no father figure, no male figure in the home, unless it might be a boyfriend or something. And we see that kind of behavior as a result, and we have come to the point where we might have at one time ostracized it or criticized it, but now we tolerate it. Then we get to the point where we accept it, and then we get to the point where we can promote it. It seems to be a vicious cycle. But I want to share with you a clipping or so from our visit to Washington, D.C. on a very hot, muggy day when we visited the Jefferson Memorial.
In the Jefferson Memorial, we have some of his quotes.
Right.
I'm going to say almost every founding father knew the Bible, knew the principles of the Bible, and had great respect for it. And here is another example etched in our history. I mean, one day, do you think they'll take this down? I hope not.
I hope not. When it says God who gave us life, gave us liberty, can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed the conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever. Commerce between master and slave is despotism. Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free. Establish the law for educating the common people. This, it is the business of the state to effect and on a general plan. You know, when you think about, Pastor, that he said, the God who gave us liberty, who gave us life. That's why I think that we need to defend the principle of life. I believe that life is sacred. I believe that he knew us when we were in our mother's womb, when our parts were yet not formed. And so God gave us life. It didn't come from the government. If the government could have given us our rights, the government could take them away. But they're God-given rights. That's why we must do everything we can to defend those principles.
These are the cornerstones of this country.
Right.
And people that are trying to act like, well, you know, there's no place for God anywhere in the public sphere, they're missing it. Now, Thomas Jefferson, in another quote, was talking about the freedom that we have in this country to believe or not believe.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing that we have here. People have the freedom to not have any faith or any religion at all, and we fight for that freedom too.
Can you believe that earlier on when we had men like Noah Webster and the great educator, they taught people to read out of the Baysom Reader, the New England Primer, and the readings went like, in the letter A, we sinned all. C, Christ crucified for sinners died. Later, we went to the philosophy of John Dewey, and John Dewey said, man doesn't have a soul. There is no God. And we've seen what's happened. And that's why I like the 10 Commandments. 6 of those commandments deal with man's relationship to man. And you know, the irony is, the Supreme Court ruled in one of its utter dictums that you couldn't have the Supreme Court could not allow Bible reading or whatever in school because of the 10 Commandments, because the students might read them, obey them, and venerate them. I guess they thought that children reading not to steal, not to bear false witness, that might be injurious to them. How ludicrous. And we've gone so far from interpreting the laws. We went to that Hegel philosophy in Germany, where it's positive legalism, and now even when we nominate what we think are strict constructionists, many of them are in compliance with the idea that if it's acceptable by the society, then that makes it okay. Our founding fathers ruled according to what was said in the Constitution. And could they make it applicable to modern day rulings?
And friends, let me also tell you that we do thank Clemens Home Solutions for being a part of our broadcast. We appreciate them so much. We always want to thank anybody that's identified with our program. And if you are a business person or an organization and you like what we're trying to do here with Faith, Family, and Freedom, be sure that you contact us. We want to reach as many people as possible and take this kind of message around the nation, if at all possible. And the film footage that we showed you there that was made at the Jefferson Memorial, it was just wonderful to go inside that wonderful monument there and see some glimpses into the life of the third president, who died, by the way, on the 50th anniversary of the writing of the Declaration of Independence, July the 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary. The irony is that he and Adams both died on the same day, and Adams thought that Jefferson was still living, but it was not so. Jefferson had already expired. And the man to whom, and rightfully so, that we give credit for writing so much of the Declaration that stated our beliefs, that stated why we were separating, that listed the grievances that we had against the king, that gave the idea that we were appealing to the supreme judge of the universe for the rectitude of our actions, and that we solemnly pledged to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And many did pay great prices. Some obviously lost their lives. Some saw their families dissipated. Some lost their fortunes. And many had to go into hiding and other things. You know, these men, when they actually made the Declaration, they were then considered to be traitors to the King, George III. If caught and apprehended, I know, for example, Paul Revere on the famous ride there, Paul Revere, that Longfellow later referred to, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he was captured, I think, about a couple times there when he went from Boston and up to Concord and in that area. If you ever get a chance, you ought to go to the Freedom Trail there in Boston and trace that. You can actually see so much history there at the first Capitol there in Boston that they use there at Faneuil Hall, and then to actually go along the same route that the patriot Paul Revere went, and telling that the British are coming. Well, it's not that slogan today, but I think we could say the arch enemies of our kind of government are coming today. The socialists, those that would make us into Nazi-style governments, controlled economies that would take away our rights, that would silence our rights of petition, that would silence our pulpits and make us be under the state thought control, the state thought control police that would want to cancel our culture, remove our heritage, remove our monuments, take down anything that somebody deems offensive, but certainly don't allow any Christian references to be kept. In other words, try to make us into an atheistic type society that Karl Marx, when he wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848, thought would be the utopia. A planned economy where everybody would just live on the contributions of others and so on. Unfortunately for him, we've seen the bad effects in Venezuela. We see it in Cuba where people protest and people try to get away from that country. They will risk life and limb to escape to come here to freedom. And it bothers me immensely when we see people come into America that don't want to be Americanized. They're coming for a free ride. They want the benefits of our medicine, they want the benefits of our educational institutions, they want the benefits, but they don't want to live under our flag, they don't want to live under our laws, they don't necessarily like us, and they come here illegally. When they say undocumented immigrant, that means they're here illegally. It's like somebody breaking into your home. They're not being documented to be there. It means they broke in. And I believe today that we ought to have a system. We ought to protect our borders. We ought to have a wall. Every nation has its own boundaries, so to speak, and many police it very vigilantly. They do it with authority, and you risk arrest if you try to get into that country illegally. And unfortunately, so many in our liberal media and the progressive thought people of today that want to transform America, make it socialistic, make it more of a controlled place. They have that design. But you and I, we as patriots must resist it at all costs. We must do everything so that we don't lose this great nation on our watch, and that's what I'm trying to do. We'll be back in just a moment. And friends, if you'd like to have any of our materials, we have a Faith, Family, and Freedom Handbook. I refer to it occasionally here on the set. I don't try to read from it necessarily unless it's just a small quotation, but this is a beautiful handbook that we have given to members of the Congress and people in authority. We, as a matter of fact, sent this a few years ago to every member, I think it was, basically of the House of Representatives. We've shared it in state legislatures, and some states have it. But I want to tell you today that I believe that we today, as never before, in this climate in which we find ourselves, a climate that I think, if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, and that's the only way I can see it, and the only way I want to see it, is that it's seemingly that we're seeing a spirit of Antichrist in our society. I seem like that idea of the end times, when people would become fierce, when they would become not considerate of others, they'd be without natural affection. We've seemingly have fallen into the trap of just exactly buying into the agenda that things ought to be free, there shouldn't be any restraints, that life, no, it doesn't really mean anything. We've killed thousands of babies per day, and that nation who does that, that includes us, will, I believe, answer to God. Life is sacred. It's sacred in the womb. If it's not sacred there, where would it be considered sacred? That's why we have people that are the social agenda people, the social planners that want to make our military and everything more like it's a social experiment. We've given up on common sense. We've allowed the reprehensible to rise in our viewpoints. We have basically said common sense doesn't belong in the discourse of our people, that we want to give lunacy and idiocy places on the pedestal of our platforms. We've changed even our churches into where there used to be altars, into smoke platforms and all like that. We've forgotten the God who made us, the God who created us and gave us life, liberty, and the ability to pursue happiness. And I think we have seen the effects of it. We've seen the police and how that crime has gone through the roof in so many places, and seemingly the spirit of lawlessness, seems like the spirit of iniquity that's working among us today. We see it, have evidence of it. People are afraid to visit some of the big cities where they used to like to tour and see the monuments and the points of interest, now are reluctant to do so for fear of the muggers, fear of those that would do harm to them, fear maybe of just being shot for no reason or whatever. It's time that we as a nation got back to God, got back on our knees and prayed to the God of heaven that he would hear once again and forsake our wicked ways. We've had some wicked ways as a nation and as a people, and we need to forsake those. I hope that you will help us advance this program, get it into other areas. If you'd like to be a subscriber or a sponsor, please contact us. We would enjoy hearing from you. We appreciate Clemens Home Solutions for bringing this kind of program into the area. We appreciate these good friends of ours that diligently want to do something for God and country. It's been a great pleasure being with you today. We want to have programs that will help you and help me, help us all, that we can be better people, that we can be better family members, that we can be better husbands and mothers, and that we can be better friends, and that we can just be better people all together. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll look forward to being with you again at the next time. But until then, this is your friend Andrew Phipps saying, may God bless you and yours.
Phipps Faith, Family, and Freedom, presented by Clemens Home Solutions and Blue Gate Restaurant and Bakery, Heritage Funeral Care, Ashton Surveyors, Hillsdale Farm, Cardinal Exteriors Roofing Specialist, Dr. Jeff Hiltz, and Sam Pierce Chevrolet.